bridge maintenance.
Because these are a little bit further away. That you can lean into.
That's Karen.
Is there like a
Not too
book that
close
comes
now.
along with
You're
that, a maintenance plan?
Oh, yeah.
Lights on.
Oh, great. Apologize to my wife. And I will open up this town council meeting for October 6th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
All right. Councillor Albert.
Here.
Councillor Kobe.
She is absent. I need a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? She is sick tonight.
3, 4, 5, 6, 0.
Next.
Councillor Ganong.
Here.
Councillor La Rochelle.
Here?
Councillor Ward.
Here.
Councillor Lunt.
Here.
And Councillor Fellows.
Here.
Next item is good news and recognition.
Please.
Yeah, I just want to say 2 Sundays ago, I believe it was 2 Sundays ago now, seeing time flies, at Beaver Park, we actually had a recognition luncheon for the employees. And I just want to thank everybody that came out. It was a great turnout, even with the odd situation we're in this year. And I just want to thank Diane. She actually did a lot of work to get this going. And the last 2 years have actually shown that it's actually an event that people like and enjoy. And hopefully we just can extend it next year and even make it a little bit bigger and grander. And the people that did not make it, I just want to, again, put a good thank you out there to all the employees that weren't able to make it, because they're all very important and do a great job. And you know, I don't think we can ever do enough recognition for people that actually put the time in and actually help serve the community. So, again, thank you for everybody that attended, and everybody that didn't, thank you also.
Anybody else? Good news and recognition. I'd probably not going to do it justice, but I would like to announce that Buttons Beal retired. Was it last week?
Yeah.
So I would like to thank him for his service. And Diane, would we be doing something to recognize him upon his retirement?
When we do the Employee Service Awards, I'm going to invite him back for his, because he did have a lot of service here for the town.
How many years, Diane? Do you know that?
Oh, I think it's like 36.
Yeah, long-term employee.
Long, yeah.
I would
So
like
we'll,
to, again, just thank him for his service associated with that, and whatever recognition for that. Thank you. Anybody else? Moving right along, Twyla.
Okay, next is your public hearings. Once the chair opens the public hearing, a person present who wishes to speak may enter the room and approach the lectern, one individual at a time, to address the council chair. Please use the microphone. Those listening from Town Hall Live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award, that's award@lisbonme.org. Councilor Ward will review his emails at this time. The first public hearing is to amend Chapter 14, the General Assistance Maximums and Appendices.
I will open the public hearing. And seeing no activity on that topic, I will close the public hearing because I have nothing in email either.
Okay. Next is the public hearing for the special entertainment permit for the Lisbon Left Hand Club.
Again, I will open the public hearing. And I will close the public hearing.
Next item is the audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may enter the room and approach the lectern. Those listening from Town Hall Live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lisbonme.org.
Anybody wishing to speak on any item before the agenda? I'm seeing nobody in the wings associated with that, and I still have no emails. I will keep the email account open throughout the course of the meeting. Anything that actually is entered, I will bring it up in turn. So if anybody has anything, feel free to do so. That's moving right along, Twyla.
Next item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a councillor requests an item to be removed for immediate discussion. Any councillor wish to remove an item now? Seeing none. Order 2020-173 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $1,742,053.81. The municipal payroll warrants, $314,922.72. The school accounts payable warrants for $467,428. The school payroll warrants totaling $391,930.09. Along with the minutes of September 15, 2020, and to set a public hearing for the 2020 CDBG housing grant. That public hearing is to be set on, that must be October 20th, right?
Yes.
And to approve the liquor license and special entertainment permit for the Left Hand Club, to set a public hearing on October 20th for Nicole Clavet doing business as Cruise and Slice. As she's an itinerant vendor, she'll also need a victualer's license, and she's at 501 Lisbon Street, along with the pole permit for the Hewden Road for the new house.
I'll make the motion.
Second? I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. For the listening public, anybody that's looking at the agenda, the municipal amount on the accounts payable, the amount that Twyla read is correct. The attachment is correct. The amount that's listed in the agenda was an error.
Typo.
Correct.
All in favor?
6-0, order passed.
Next item?
Under Council Orders, Resolutions, and Ordinances, Order 2020-174, the Department of Marine Resources Upper Dam discussion.
And Casey Clark is here from DEP.
DMR.
DMR, I'm sorry.
No, it's
DMR.
fine. And
Yeah, go ahead,
Yep.
adjust that to your liking.
And DMR is what, sir?
Department of Marine Resources.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. If you could see my face, you'd recognize I've been here before. I was here last summer to talk about the Mill Street Dam. So I'm here now to talk about something a little bit different. We're not jumping into the river and pulling out a dam immediately. What we're doing now is moving forward with design plans for removal of the Upper Town Dam. And so we applied for funding to be able to do this. This isn't something that's paid for by general fund or by the DMR's normal budgets. So we applied for funding through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and were awarded that funding last spring. We're just now getting out to your town to sort of do these things because we're just now getting permission to come back out to town meetings. But we're also just now getting started with that design process. And so what we'd like to do moving forward is eventually have designs for each of the barriers that are on the Sabattis River. Currently, there's 5 barriers that are still left on the Sabattis River. So we'll be working on each of those over the next about 2 years or so to eventually have design plans that allow fish passage at each of them. So I'm here tonight to specifically ask the town about what your sort of vision is for the Upper Town Dam, and this is the dam that's just above Webster Street. It goes by, any dam in the state of Maine goes by about 5 names, so certainly let me know if you don't know what dam I'm talking about. But the Upper Town Dam is 300 or so feet just upstream of the Webster Street Bridge. So I'm really here to sort of answer questions that you have about our process, sort of start the communication, and then also hopefully to hear sort of what your town's vision is for that site or anything else along the shore nearby there, and to find out who it is best to work with on the town as we move forward with the design process. And really what we want is to find one or a couple of representatives for the town to be a part of meetings with us and engineers, as well as DEP and other stakeholders that are either permitting or funding the projects moving forward, to make sure that everybody's at the same table and that the town has a stake there. So with that, I'll kind of be quiet and let the council ask questions.
Let's address your last question first and then proceed from there. For officials, Diane, who are we thinking? I'm seeing you,
And probably Randy.
and that's where I wasn't sure if it would be him or if we keep going to the Brett bucket, so I wanted to make sure that
Yeah, I think it would be Randy on this one.
I agree. Primarily for a couple of different reasons. One, for PW, for our infrastructure, and 2, with your last trip into town associated with that, one of the challenges that I would say associated with this dam would be proper marketing associated with what's going on to address the potential for public backlash, so we can avoid that situation that you were presented with last time.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Quick question about that. That
Yep.
dam's already been breached, is my understanding. Isn't that the whole half side of that that's already kind of been blown out already?
Yeah, about 20 or so feet of the 150 feet, I think, spillway of it did break out. So there was some structure that was on the sort of right-hand side of the stream as you're looking downstream at the dam. But that was a sluice gate or something else, and so what's left in the river now is about 100-ish or so feet of spillway, and then the waterworks structure on the left-hand bank, which has that, you know, sort of gearing on top and then some sluice gates underneath it. And so that's what's left in the river now. And that was, I think, 2012 or so, there was a big storm, and that's what eventually broke that. And then 2013, they went in and cleaned that up, and that's when they put in the riprap at the base there, just at the sort of town parking lot there. Yep.
So the
Yeah.
question,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the question that I would have, and I think that's going to be the prevalent one out there, is not about the dam removal, it's about how much water is left in the stream after it is removed, because it's going to be taken down to bedrock, I understand.
Yep.
And the second part I would ask is based on the last experience we had, I understand they wanting to get the vision and all that, but ultimately the decision is not the town's to make. Is that correct?
For this case, no. The decision is the town's. The town owns the dam, so it is your decision what you do with it moving forward. From our point of view, we see a number of benefits to removing this dam. Obviously, I work for the Department of Marine Resources. We're tasked with restoring sea-run fishes, so the dam is obvious impediment. But I would sort of pitch that, you know, I don't live in this town. I don't want to speak for you, but I think that there's benefits to removing this, primarily because it's a derelict structure that's in the river. So removing that is just going to be removing one more. What we see is eventually just removing that piece of concrete that could break and could cause other issues further downstream. There is a scour risk to the Webster Street Bridge currently. If the dam did break during a high water event, it could damage that bridge, not necessarily causing any, you know, substantial damage, but DOT has raised that as an issue, that it is a risk because of that. So DOT would also like us to remove it for that reason. And then finally, from my, you know, personal perspective and standing there at the top of the dam and looking downstream, there's that large sort of dry stone laid retaining wall that goes all the way from the dam almost to the Webster Street Bridge. And removing the dam, and this was in the design specs that I kind of showed you there, we'd ideally like to regrade that so it looks like what it is up above the dam, where you'd have a grassy slope kind of going down there. So by removing that dry laid stone, you'd be removing the risk of that structure at some point falling in from erosion or something else, just removing the maintenance of that, and replacing it with something that the town could actually access. And so I think that there's some benefits, and I'd be happy to sort of work with the town to identify if those are things that the town would benefit, or if there's other things the town sees as benefits of removing the dam, and sort of working with them, again, as part of the design process to really highlight that and make sure that this is a benefit to the town.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
The, with the engineering study that you'd be doing initially, I mean, as a council, I mean, it's one of those things where I think we actually need a lot more information before we actually have an opportunity to even consider what would be done, what wouldn't be done. This is a discussion that's going on, and as long as I've been serving on council, it's been, you know, well over 10 years, off and on. You know, the idea of the height of the river, that was actually a big controversy last time, and I mean, it definitely changed the appearance of what the other river looked like once it was removed.
Mm-hmm.
Good, bad, or evil, I know there's benefits to everything, but unfortunately, just the breaching of the dam changed the outlook of a lot of people, what that river looks like, and actually showed a lot of evils down that river that actually will, unfortunately, the monies that you have won't clean up. You mean
Right. Are you referring to the bona fide landfill
well,
sort
not
of debris
even
and
above
other
that.
things?
I mean, we're talking above. If you go above where you are right now, actually upstream, I mean, there's actually, you know, debris on the side of the river. I mean, that was all filled in over years and years. So the more the river goes down, the more that stuff really becomes more visible.
Yeah.
The other part of it, I know we had a lot of complaints after with the other project was done. That, I mean, the cement was broken up and not hauled away, but actually just left on the side as the embankment, which really took away from the view of what was there and the ability for kids to actually, you know, recreate down on the edge of it. So, I mean, I think the whole outlook of what it would look like and what the possibilities of what we would do, and we wouldn't want to see what happened last time, because what happened last time did not help you to the effect of what you want to do this time, I guess is my point. So
Yeah, I
there
hear
would
that.
actually have to be a lot of hurdles jumped over before, as a council, at least I would support the idea of actually moving forward with anything. I'm not sure exactly, you know, last time who was actually, you know, designed the way they did that, but we just, as a council, got a lot of complaints after with the way the project was done, and we tried to emphasize the idea we didn't have control over that project, but we do over this one. So
Yep.
We are definitely going to have a lot more information and to even consider it.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely hear that, and I appreciate those comments. To be honest, I'm here tonight because I don't want it to go the same way it did last time. I really want to have the town have an opportunity for input, and that's really why I'm coming to you now. Before we have anything more than just that concept design, I really want to make sure that the town can be a stakeholder at every step along the way. And so if that means giving an update at every selectman meeting or every other selectman meeting of sort of this is where we're looking at, this is where we're going forward, we can certainly do that. As far as the design process, we're doing a design process with the goal that within a year or so we'll have a final design and this is what it would look like. As part of that, we're going to have a stage coming up here in the fall where we'd be able to present sort of design alternatives of, do you want just the spillway removed? Do you want the spillway and that gatework structure removed? Do you want there's a small retaining wall on the right-hand side of near where the breach is that currently is holding up some embankment. Do you want that still in place or do you want that removed and regraded? And so those sort of questions are things we'll bring to you or bring to someone else in the town depending on how you want to delegate, so that you can have say in those. So, not to say that we are able to do absolutely anything. We're not rich. We certainly don't have funding to do this yet. We'll be applying for funding eventually to do this implementation work. We're just doing the design at this point. But we want to make sure that we have something at the end of the day that the town, values. And I only mention money because if it's an astronomical, amount, none of us will be able to do anything. So.
Now, just to add that, at what point do the design will they actually have an idea about the river dropping? I mean, they should have a pretty good idea what's being retained at this point.
Yeah, so there's a couple compounding things in there. So I can look back. I have some information because they've already done some depth coring there to sort of see how deep is the sediment at the actual dam site and how far down does the bedrock go versus how far down does the concrete go, right? And so looking at that, I can probably tell you that there's at least 3 feet of concrete that's sitting right there on bedrock, probably. That isn't to say that the dam will necessarily drop by 3 feet because I don't know what it is 10 feet above it, right? It could be, substantially shallower, just a little bit above it. So I can get you answers on that, and if that's a specific deliverable, I'll make sure that our engineers have that for you sometime, again, probably this fall before we make any decisions.
And just one other question. Since the other ones come down on Mill Street, have yourself or any of your team had an opportunity to try to canoe up the river or check what the river looks like from the Mill Street to the Webster Corner? I mean, have you out to this low water? Have any of your team been out there to actually assess it to see what it looks like compared to what it was before?
A couple of our partners at DEP have been out there, and then actually the owner of the Bonafide landfill site has actually flown drones over there to get drone imagery of that river during low water this summer. And I'd be happy to share some of those things too. I need to ask permission because I don't own that video, but I believe we could share those things. But yeah, I've seen it there. From my point of view, again, I don't live in this community, but from my point of view, that looks like the beginnings of the river sort of returning to what it is, which is a river, not a pond, right? So
we just had a gentleman come in that actually been a life resident there that used to go down the river and clean up the banks, and he actually came in one night and actually gave us a big education on
And a bag of trash.
that actually he's seen, and commented about the idea of the oil sheens and stuff that actually came about after it went down because it allowed the bankings to open up, and he actually educated us one night exactly about his life on the river and the ability of not even to canoe it because at places he had to get out and drag his canoe because the water was so low.
Yeah.
And this was being before the low. So as a council, we've actually had some pretty interesting discussions and stuff that actually, from someone that lives on the river that actually seen what it looked like for the last 20, 30 years. It's the change that he actually was actually left with and not had an opportunity to voice his concern about before. So
Yep.
I'm sure this next one we're going to have to really make sure that it's going to benefit everybody.
Yep. Okay.
Well, I would understand that the ultimate goal of this, the primary goal, is to increase the fishway for natural habitat over the whole length of the river. So this particular portion is only a portion of it, and depends on the rest of it being done as well. So where would that fall? I mean, what would we gain, or are we sitting here waiting for something else to be done before the gain is realized?
As far as, make sure I'm understanding.
I mean,
this
I
correctly.
understand the safety part,
Yep.
and the possibility of the dam collapse, but as far as the ultimate goal, increasing the fishway, that's not going to be changed.
So removing this dam alone, certainly not, no. And as I said, we're working forward that our current grant will pay for just the designs for the remaining 5 projects. And so going downstream to upstream, that's Farwell Dam, which is, just first one upstream from where we are here. And then the Upper Town Dam, which is the one that you own and I'm here speaking about tonight. And then as you get into Sabattis, there's a privately owned dam by Mr. Fortier. And then the town of Sabattis owns the Mill Remnant Dam, and then they also sit on the commission for the Sleeper Dam. And so we're working forward on all those. To be honest, some of those I think are more achievable than others in the short term. We're hopeful that maybe the Mill Remnant Dam could actually come out as soon as next summer. So that could be relatively easy. It's just a dry stone laid dam that's still sitting on bedrock. And it sits right next to the Veterans Park that's up there. So we'll ideally remove that and sort of rehash that Veterans Park to have a little bit of parking and open it up. But it certainly relies on us getting all those done. I think that, it'd be hard for me to give you a timeline of when we'd ideally be done with that. It'd be great if we'd be done with it in 10 years, but it could be 5 years just depending on what we look at for funding. Because all this, again, comes from us applying for and being successful in mostly federal grants to pay for this type of work.
I think
You
that
had discussions with Sabattis?
Yeah, so
And how have they been received?
the town of Sabattis is really looking forward to us sort of cleaning up that Mill Remnants dam site. And then the Dam Commission, we met with them, about 6 weeks ago or so now, and they're happy to move forward with us with the same sort of process that you're in here, which is let's put together some designs and figure out if something will work for us. They have to do a little bit of repair to that dam as well, and so I think that ideally they're sort of looking for when we go in to do our fishway, they'll be able to do some of the big repairs they need to do to the dam. Their biggest concern is about having too many alewives in the lake, and so we're working with DEP and some others to make sure that we can sort of strike that balance of having free swimming alewives, which are the fish that we're primarily going to see benefit from this, but not having too many, which is what the the Dam Commission is concerned about, because there have been some correlations, though they're not directly to algae blooms and alewives, but there's a lot of misinformation out there about alewives and algae blooms, so we don't want to necessarily put the nail in the coffin there, but we're happy to work with them to work through that issue.
I ask because last summer, or the last visit here associated with that, we as a council actually had a very bad taste in our mouth because we are of the impression that you guys leveraged a bankrupt organization on a piece of property that we had very limited input into. So this one will go very differently if it's something that we actually own that property. We would actually like to work with you rather than have it be. The fact is that you found resource to be able to take a dam out. We had that much input into it.
Yeah.
That didn't set well.
I understand that. I understand that, Councilman Ward. I again want to say I'm here tonight to make sure that we do that process differently. That's absolutely why I'm here.
We appreciate that, and we'll take it at face value, but in the fact that if it's a slower process where you only have the ability to be able to deal with designs, we may have thousands of questions, we may have 10, I don't know, but I really would like to avoid certain council meetings actually live in my memory. The same night you're actually here to actually recognize a state baseball championship and you guys go first. They see a side of Mr. Ward that I'm not real proud of.
That's fair.
I'd rather have you actually be in town on a higher note than in the future.
Yep, well, I absolutely appreciate that. And to be honest, Mr. Ward, I'm here tonight to sort of start that conversation and really, bottom of my heart and my agencies as well, my commissioner would be upset if I didn't try to do something that the town would be proud of.
Appreciate it.
So we want to make sure we do that.
I think, Mr. Chair, I think it would be really important that we have a solid input from our staff and from whoever else.
Community as well, because there are people along that corridor that it's going to directly impact.
Ultimately, the council gets to decide, so it would be nice if everybody is able to reflect back and forth on what our interest is. So just to have the staff that's involved with it keyed in with what our thoughts are on a regular basis would be good.
Sure. Mark?
Yep. And I think there's an issue too that existing river now is used for people kayaking and canoeing and fishing, and if you lower that to a little stream, you're going to lose that public recreation access there, and it's also very visible from Route 196. So you're going to have an impact on the visual aesthetics of the region too. I think that's a serious issue there. If you turn that back to a stream, so I'm not sure that
making minor changes to the design of the area around the dam is going to mitigate that issue in any way.
Well, I absolutely agree, and I hear with you there about the question about how much is going to drop the water level. I'm happy to get an answer to you
I think
about
that's
that.
really going to be important to know
Yeah.
what it's going to look like afterward. You know, is
Yeah.
it going to be just a little narrow channel that no one can use for anything?
I mean, I can point you to several other places around the state where we've taken out dams to restore it to be a river, and then it looks like one of Maine's beautiful rivers.
Right.
I
But I'm not
realize
sure that's
it's
going to look
changed,
like that. So.
but
what does that do to the water table on a lake?
it shouldn't change the water table on the lake at all. There's no, it's not going to change the amount of water that's in the lake. Period.
That's
To that
Okay.
point,
That's because of the
Thank you.
existing dam.
yeah, to that point that you had just mentioned,
Yeah.
you said you're willing to go back and try to see if you can determine roughly what the impact would be on water levels. Understanding that you're going to go ahead and look at previous projects, similar sort of layouts and what happened there. I think that information, coupled with some outreach to folks on that corridor who live there prior to, I mean, while you're in the planning stages, is exactly, I think, kind of information that I know I would appreciate if I was a property owner on that particular body of water. Because two things can happen. A, I'm going to have that initial, why are you changing my view? I've lived here all my life. I love this.
Yep.
And then, oh, there's some science around this. Or I may have questions about the science that you sent out here that shows me it says it's only going to drop this much, because that's not been my experience. At least they can understand that there's an effort being made, and that here's the party you want to have the dialogue with to understand, you know, hey, these are the folks who came up with it. Maybe ask some questions there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to start there. Let's say start where we're at, which is the beginning, and make sure that all stakeholders, especially the ones on the corridor, are included in the conversation. That's
Absolutely.
That's my take.
And to that end, you know, what is yours? What is the best vision of doing that with your town? You know, what is the best way to actually outreach those people? Is it, I feel like knocking on doors during this time of our pandemic is probably not great. So,
No.
Probably not that. Not so much that.
I mean, a public hearing here at some point when things do actually settle down. It sounds like you're a little ways out, possibly in the next summer before you actually get a lot more information, I would think. So maybe we'd be in a
Public
upturn
info
from this, so
session.
we could actually
Yeah.
have an event one night where we actually have the public come in and be able to ask questions, and I think that'd be really important.
yeah,
When the
and
time comes, I think we seize on all of our media channels that we have here, whether it's the social media aspect, our town's website, along with the public hearing. That way we're casting a wide net, and anybody who wants to get involved can do so.
Perfect.
And they have these.
I think it'd probably be prudent on
You know,
site.
and Mr. Chair,
Yes.
our conservation committee might be a natural involvement
Right.
as well with the staff. So
yeah, and in other towns, we usually work with either Parks and Recreation or conservation committees or some combination of the both, including sometimes a public works person as well, just to make sure we have all the knowledge in the room to sort of highlight things that are going to be important to the town, because we don't always know those. So
I don't disagree. What I would actually approach here is the fact that the two people that we actually have tasked and representing the Conservation Commission as their liaison, I feel confident that we've got the right players for right now. Anything that's there, we can kick it to them because they're having the same issue associated with what they're, through COVID, what's their involvement and what can they actually achieve. So by all means, I think it's a fair question. For clarification, these are the last 5 dams on the entire causeway to be able to change that fishway into a reality, or is there more that we're not seeing here?
that is all that I'm aware of. When I met with the Dam Commission, they mentioned sort of a small rock-laid dam that a couple guys in an afternoon could remove at some point in the river, but I haven't actually found it yet. But that's to my understanding. There's only 5 actual barriers where we need designs to go in and fix and allow those to pass fish. And I say to pass fish because at these different sites we're going to see different things, where at some sites we're looking at a dam removal, at other sites we're looking at building a fishway, or sometimes both. Farwell will likely be a both scenario. And I mean, to that end, again, because we went through this process with Mill Street, Farwell is a dam that's in your town. It's owned by a private entity. It's owned by the same company that owned Mill Street. We will be working through designs for that as well, and we're happy to continue to update you on designs for those as we move forward. Similar to the Upper Town Dam, we're not in a big hurry to remove those, mostly because we need to get our designs first and get all this sort of processes moving forward. That one is something that we are being pushed pretty hard to move forward on removal for, and that's because if the Farwell Dam stays in place, it's a risk to the bona fide landfill just downstream. And it sounds like they're sort of waiting to do their final cap closure restoration of the river at the bona fide landfill site until that dam is no longer a risk. So we're really trying to move forward on that one more quickly than some of the others, but that doesn't preclude us from spending, at least this next winter and into next summer, making sure that we're continuing to update you on anything before we move forward to anything. And again, we wouldn't want to break down on that, or we wouldn't break ground on that site for at least a year or two. So we have some time between now and then.
Cool. I'm sorry, I'm still tripping up on. My understanding is that the Sabattis Lake is dammed.
Yes, sir.
How? It's not one of these dams.
It is. It is the Sleeper Dam. That's the lake outlet.
So if you remove the Sleeper Dam, how does that not impact the water level on Sabattis Lake? I'm not getting that.
No, that's a good clarification question. So we will not be removing that dam. We'll be putting a fishway adjacent to that dam.
Okay.
So the dam will stay in place, and we're working with the Sabattis Lake, the Sleeper Dam Commission, which is individuals from Greene, Wales, and Sabattis all sit on that commission, to make sure that we're doing something that they want at the site, and at the same time they need to do some repairs to their dam, so they're likely to be doing those repairs at the same time. So we're sort of working to marry up our engineering for both of those processes.
Okay. Thank you. Now I get it, because I was trying to figure out how we're going to talk about migratory fish coming from the Atlantic to there without removal. Thank
no,
you.
I appreciate the clarification, Mr.
Mark?
Ward. I apologize for not having that clear before.
Following up on that question, would it be possible to build a fishway at this location in Lisbon instead of removing the remaining 3 feet of the dam?
At the upper town site?
Or, yeah, at the upper dam.
I would say it is technically feasible. It is totally unfundable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what makes the difference there? Why is that unfundable versus the Sabattis Pond one?
That's a good question. So it's mostly because that dam doesn't serve a purpose anymore, and it's already, broken in some places. So really putting a fishway there would mean building the dam back up to its normal height, or whatever height it was, so it wouldn't at some point be more of a risk, because you're going to be sort of impounding more water to run a fishway at the site. And so it's a lot of infrastructure to put something there at a site that doesn't serve a necessary purpose, whether it's, water control, which is what the lake outlet dam is, or hydropower or something else along those lines.
Yep.
So,
To that point, this is just another question that comes from that. So that dam serves no purpose right now, other than just a natural, what's left. No, it's not being, monitored or I guess used in a way to regulate water flow. It's just sitting there. It has a portion of it that's been breached, so it's not even doing its initial function or purpose. Is there any way to show that? I'm sure there probably is, and that's something that we discussed. If you're looking to get funding and you're looking to remove this, obviously it served a purpose before. It was holding back X amount of water, or this is what it does right now to keep the water level over here. We remove it, it's going to go here. I'm just trying to see if we can get that study together to understand these things. What the intent and purpose was for the dam initially? What was its goal and responsibility and duty? When did it fall out of favor, or disrepair, or service, whatever it was, and just be left as this dam that's basically a structure that's not used, and has fallen into disrepair, and it really serves no purpose? Because I think that's going to go a long way to sell the point of saying, this is why we want to make this go away, because it doesn't do what it was intended to do. And right now, it's only doing 20% of. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. Of what it was intended to do initially, and that's really not helping. Or you can come up with all the reasons why and why not.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just think that's going to be a lot easier if I'm sitting there and trying to understand for a yay or a nay. I want the whole timeline from when this thing arrived, what its function and purpose was, to how we got here right now and why you're asking us to remove it. And if it's not doing anything for us, tell me why that we should make it go.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll likely be reaching out to the Historical Society to sort of get some of that information as well. I think that they should have some of it. Just off the cuff, I know, because I've seen some historical photos, that it was there because there was a mill at some point there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to.
Any other questions?
Absolutely.
Anybody? Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate
and
it.
absolutely, please keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Next item, 12.
Order 2020-175, the Rurumbo redevelopment evaluation study.
Good evening, everybody. Brett Richardson, Economic and Community Development Director. This is an update on the Warumbo process. We had a good meeting August 24th. Over 60 folks showed up. That followed up with a survey. And I think from what the survey told us, there's a consensus emerging around a mixed-use approach to the Warumbo site. And what this request is tonight is to get funding to refine exactly what the buildable, or what the cost would be to build up what would probably be the priority area for development next to the railroad tracks. Using an elevation study, what would it cost to bring that up? So it's fairly straightforward. I think, key points, 78% of the survey respondents prioritized design standards for a dense mixed-use development focused on retail and dining options to extend the Main Street Village area to the river with retail on the first floor, office space on the second floor, and residential on the third floor. That's doubled down with 65% of respondents prioritized a balanced mix of green space and river views, limited commercial development, and ample parking for village businesses. So I think that gives us enough clarity to move forward and understand from a feasibility standpoint what it would cost to bring the area next to the railroad tracks up out of the floodplain. Preliminary analysis by Public Works estimates that it's probably 6 to 10 inches, and that price tag would require probably about 40 grand or so of fill to bring that up. Town staff talked with the floodplain coordinator with the state. She confirmed that the Lisbon Planning Board has the authority to permit fill in that space, and then we could apply for a letter of map amendment for fill to essentially bring that land out of the floodplain. And that's important because for a developer that would reduce floodplain insurance costs and other design standards that might add price tag to the sale. So if we're looking at honoring the public's input, keeping the river or the space next to the river in green space, providing parking for the businesses, it does make sense to look up at those railroad tracks that's been opened up by Public Works. And so this is probably a relatively small budget item to assess that. There's folks in town who have already done some work on that site and have data. We would put it out to bid because of the purchasing policies, but I think the price tag would probably be under 2 grand to do this study, and it would lend a lot of clarity on it. So that's the ask. Back in February, we requested $15,000 allocation to follow through on this process, anticipating that these type of needs would arise. And so this is within that need, we believe. And so that's the ask, is to put a bid out to see what it would cost to get this elevation study done, and then assess what the cost would be to bring that area up.
So, point of clarification then, the fact is RFP is anything above 10. If he's looking at 2, we should be able to do this through quotes.
Yes.
Quotes.
Yeah, that's what he meant.
No,
Not a
right.
formal bid.
No, I run into it all day long, is the fact words have value in that regard. I don't want to have for the listening dot above your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does not require a full RFP.
Right.
I appreciate that. Yeah, quote versus bid.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the question I have is, does AvCog or somebody have a resource? Because I can provide you a list of names through Lewiston. I just don't know if you have somebody that would actually do this kind of survey.
If, Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
We've actually already paid to actually have the lot surveyed and actually some elevation done. So it's not the idea of actually starting all over again. It's more the idea of it. Possibly if that person that did it before is just the idea of doing an additional work to what's already been done, not restarting it. I mean, from what I understand.
Who did the original?
Yeah, from what I understand, Brett, basically what we do is we go in and say on the side towards the railroad tracks, if we say we're going to come 100 feet away from the tracks, for for the length of the tracks. Basically, they go out and they actually measure everything above that 107, basically grade right above the floodplain, and just measure how low it is. And then it's basically a mathematical equation of,
How much
you know, 100 feet at 7 inches and another 100 feet at 10 inches. Then it comes up to cubic amount of material, and then once that's all put on paper, then we can actually use that, working with the planning board, to get a request in to see if that could actually be redesignated if this was done. So we can get an answer before we spend the money.
Oh, yeah,
Basically, this is what it comes down to,
yeah. You mean to do the fill?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a relatively small amount of money building off what we already know. Because of the site cleanup after the VRAP and some of the crushing and grinding, we need to verify exactly where it's at, and what that gap is. With that gap will come that price tag, and then we'll be able to determine whether it's worth pursuing further. So it's the next step in this feasibility analysis.
But once you get that information of what it would take to do it, before we even do the filling, we can actually request the idea FEMA to look at it, or to actually, for someone to look at and verify if we were to do it, that they would take it out of flood zone, right?
Correct.
We would have verification ahead of time.
We would vet all of this, but this is what they'll ask for in terms of data. So this is a way to quantify that.
Survey. Correct. That's the money, is that you got certification that it is out of that.
Yeah. Or what it costs.
Who did that survey, the original?
Jay did.
Oh, so what I would advocate then is the fact that, with straight lines? I'm trying to remember his name,
Little River? Was it?
Yeah.
Little River.
Little River, yeah.
I would make the motion that we actually work with Little River, who did the original survey, for the economies of scale. That would be my motion.
Yep. If that's-
I'm looking for a second on that.
I'll make a second.
I would just,
For discussion.
yeah, I would just like to actually have, I mean, for anybody that's doing it, just in case, you know, we want to be fair and equitable about it, to make sure it's just a written guideline of what we want and the time frame that we need it in. So we can make sure that not only are we getting exactly at the end that what we're asking for, that it's actually within a timely manner that we can actually use it to do what we want to do. And not, just right now, it's a very busy world out there in surveying and everything, and I'm sure Jay's always done as well, but as any company is, I know there's a lot of busyness out there and a lot of need, but I'm one for trying to keep stuff local, you know what I mean, and if we already have something and it will work, I'm all with that, but I just think it'd be nice really to actually have it in writing, very detailed what we're looking for and what the result will be at the end. And he, you know, he may even have some more background on how this actually all equates out and how we can actually make it work a little bit better, you know what I mean?
I ran into him actually last week. We had this conversation. I think he's interested in it. I think he can turn it around quickly.
I think if you're looking for details, you won't find anybody that gives you more detail than he does.
Yeah.
Well, that's my experience with the planning board as well, too, is that somebody that actually knows our codes.
Every time he came to the planning board, he was telling us things we didn't know.
Right.
And
Knows our ordinances as well.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. This survey, the survey that if it's done, could also tell us what it would cost to go further than we are even asking and still be within our property line. Is that correct?
It sounds like he's looking, and I'm not, and again, that's the one thing about knowing the details. It sounds like you pretty much want to go the full property line on the railroad track side to know the limitations and dollar values, right?
Yeah, and if you look at the site, the closer you get to the river, it starts to drop off further. So just from common sense, theoretically you could bring that up, but the price tag would go up, and then you would start to tiptoe into some of the green space that the folks had prioritized next to the river. So I think there's a natural balancing point that, like Fern said, is 100 or 150 feet parallel to the tracks in a corridor, and looking at that really as the area that's best suited, probably from a price tag to get it out of the floodplain or to manage being in the floodplain, as well as to balance the other community goals.
I was going to say knowledge of that that complete amount might be very helpful as far as potential development goes for someone wanting to purchase in there.
Definitely.
The other question I have is down the line is the fact that Randy actually came before us 6 months ago with an easement for ability to use Frost Hill for gravel. Do we already have the resource to be able to tap into this to reduce that $40,000 cost?
You mean Memorial Street?
Yeah, Memorial Street.
Memorial, thank you.
Yeah, I don't,
Offering process.
yeah, we got that survey a little while ago, and there's really not a whole lot there for us to get now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking of the obvious associated with that, and remembering the fact is at that point in time, and the fact is if there is
Yeah.
value, then no sense
Yep.
sitting on something that's doing us no good if we could get the value of it for this purpose.
If we can get some of that, we will, but I don't think there's a whole lot there now.
But again, for the listening dot above Brett's head, we're not talking a significant amount of money to actually increase a pretty significant value in marketing this property.
And if I may, Chair?
Yes.
The more knowledge we have, the better we are prepared, right? So even if we actually don't have the funding or the capability of actually getting the material needed to fill it at this point in time, if we actually know what it would take, if we get the permission and we have documentation and someone was to come in and say, I really love to have this spot, and we can actually show them what it's going to cost beyond the price of buying it, what it would cost to raise it.
You've already done it.
Then we're getting it, I wouldn't want to use the word shovel ready, but we're actually getting as close as we can. Any boundaries that we can actually get away from the picture and make it more feasible for someone to come in and actually look at that site and look at it as that we're interested in, and that we've done some of the homework, because a private firm to come in and actually do those initial things would probably be hard to find, but if we get those out of the way, and it doesn't really cost a lot of money to do it, it's more manpower time and just working with the resources we have to get that done on paper. It's not going to go away. Once we have it done, it's the same information tomorrow and 5 years.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
And if you haven't walked the site, you should. It's pretty impressive. The fact that just seeing what Randy has been able to do with the reclaim and everything to date, it's pretty amazing. The fact is just the change of the contour of that environment in the last 6 months has been pretty cool to see.
It's amazing.
One of the bright spots for COVID, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that being able to see this come to fruition.
Definitely.
Motion's on the floor, and a second's already been had to...
I just get a point of clarification. I just want to make sure I understand what your motion is. So is your motion to approve the use of the downtown TIF funds as authorized via council item 2020-34 to retain, that's Little River instead of a qualified consultant?
to hire Little River to do the necessary survey
To
for...
conduct the evaluation study of the Warumbo parcel and the rest is the same, okay?
Right.
Just want to make sure. Okay.
We cover all aspects of that. Thank you for the roundabout. I think that was the clear approach. All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Next,
And Brett,
please.
basically, Brett, you'll probably work with Randy, whatever, to do a proper write-up of what the description of what we're looking for is. And
Sure.
The wants, in a
Yep.
sense, yeah. It'd just be nice to actually have that ahead of time to make sure that everything comes at the end exactly what you're looking for,
Yep.
that's all.
Mr. Chair,
Good idea.
Yep.
can I ask if Brett will stick around for the solar discussion, or had you planned to,
Sure, I'll be here.
Let's move it up.
if you want?
Let's move it up. If that's the only thing holding Brett here tonight, can we take that item out of order, please?
Sure can. Order 2020-178, the solar request for proposal.
To frame this one, the last meeting, we talked about electric vehicles, and there was a shelf life on a application that needed to be completed within September, and we empowered Councilor Fellows to work with Brett to be able to make that happen. They did so. We also talked that night associated with a solar RFP, and that one's kind of more ambiguous, and the fact is, where are we going to go out? Framing that, Don, you have the floor, sir.
Okay. Just today or yesterday, Brett got some input or output from the application for the EV grant, and there's obviously more to it. And Revision Energy is coordinating with them. So at this point, we've been invited to go to a webinar, which is tomorrow afternoon, I think at 3, to get more details on the EV stations themselves. And there's a sample form. It's actually put out by Revision Energy, who's apparently is the coordinating factor with CMP. And so there's a lot of detail there that neither one of us know. We hope that we can get some information on it. But the most important thing we don't know is we do know that they will support up to $4,000 per port for 4 ports or more that we want to do it. As I understand it from talking to Brett, there seems to be some enthusiasm on the part of CMP that we've applied. If don't count me wrong, but I think having been in Androscoggin County counts a lot. So we could be on the edge of something that's coming this way and supporting the corridor very well. However, we don't know what the outlay is. We do know what the cost of machines are. At least we did when we submitted the application. And so what we really want to do is go forward and have a sense that at some point we're going to have a dollar figure that we need to come up with for the machines themselves. This application, by the way, through Revision Energy, asks if we want to have free power or partially free power, or we want to be able to just give it all away or charge it for it all. So that's all a possibility within this application. So that will affect how we deal with it too. We picked a site along with the coordination with Diane, and that site was the least piece of property behind
Rusty.
yeah, Rusty's Tavern, or Rusty's Tavern. Rusty's Lantern.
Lantern, I say.
That piece of property that the town has leased forever and a day for no money, and we have the right to do whatever we want to do with it, essentially.
That's the one we just leased.
So, and it connects to the park and ride by the Railroad Tavern. So, I've looked at that site, not with any kind of expertise, but I've looked at it's lower to some degree than the Rusty's Lantern property, but it is on the same level as or close to the same level as the park and ride. So what would have to happen to that site? There needs to be some small site prep. If you actually take and connect the place to put the EV stations next to the park and ride, you can extend that area out by the amount of the parking spots, cover that, and be on our leased piece of land. So that's the option that we put in. I don't know that we have an option at this point to change what we've decided. If we want to change and go to a different location, I mentioned those locations before. So that's where we are with that. And at some point, I think, I'll let Brett speak for Brett, but at some point I think we'd like a sense from the council if we can get an idea how much money we want to spend or how much money it could be spent, what we want to do, because we don't want to go through all the whole process and say, okay, great, come up with your money, and council says no. So that's what we'd like to.
Yeah. Will you, any idea tomorrow at this webinar if there's going to be more detail on financials at all, or is it strictly, you don't really know because you haven't been there yet probably with the webinar?
It seemed, Don, you've seen it as well, it seemed fairly high level. It seemed kind of introductory, perhaps even a marketing pitch for these guys to get more proposals in. That was my takeaway from it.
Really? Okay.
You may have seen it differently than I, but
I don't know. It says on the webinar, find out more of the details.
So is a fair assessment at this point more to come? The fact is the net immediate, we met the deadline associated with filling an application to Fern's point last time, is the fact that no blood actually spilled doing so. Let's proceed with what we can to make the best value as we proceed. Because anything we're talking about now, we're talking spring before it ultimately comes to fruition. So let's just figure out what we want to do in spring.
And things like that.
They'll come out in the next month or so and do a site walk and a feasibility. And I think at that time we'll start to get more numbers about what it looks like and what the feasibility would be.
I can't remember what machine we put on the app because we didn't get a copy of the application. It just went. And I thought we'd get a printout of it, but apparently we didn't, or it wasn't possible to get one. And I do remember what we put in for machines. We put in for 4 machines, and I thought the total was $15,000 with all totally equipped, something like that.
Sounds about right.
So that was what we had for what we thought we would end up expending one way or another, because the infrastructure and the metering and all that stuff would be owned and put in by CMP. So up to $4,000 per port. And if at the location we are at, there is some three-phase power close, but not next door. So it's going to take some some running of wires across there, unless we choose a site that's, and or are able to choose a site that has much more close three-phase power.
I'd be curious to see how aggressive or how interested CMPR is willing to be partners. You mean, so if they're interested and excited about us putting it in, I think I'd wait to see what they have to offer, because, you know, they may
Nobody's
make it look
guaranteed
really,
anything.
they may make it look really easy for us. So I don't know. So I guess to be seen, right?
I'm going to ask a question. I'll be the devil's advocate here. So, do we have an idea of roughly what the traffic is on the 196 corridor of electric cars that would need this? That would be my first question. My second question would be, I'm assuming these are universal for any electric vehicle that's coming through that needs a charge. I'm not an electric vehicle guy, so maybe I'm just ignorant to it. I don't know if they have different attachments that you would, obviously, for your vehicle, but I would want to even just understand basics of it, saying how many electric or hybrid vehicles are in the state that use these ports. Before we want to pony up that kind of cash, I want to know, even if we're getting something to the tune of $4,000 per each unit, if we still got to cough up $15K at a time of COVID, I know we're all thinking the same thing. And I definitely want to be on the front end of the wave when new things come around. I definitely want to be there. But I just want to have us be mindful of that. I think we all are thinking the same thing. So more information from that webinar is going to definitely help me understand, I'm sure all of us, how to, whether or not we can get on board from a money perspective.
Part of the point is, too, in applying for this, is that there are EV stations, and I remember going to the AVGOG seminar a couple years ago, and there's more EV vehicles in western Maine than there were anywhere else at that time. Those vehicles were taking day trips to go to places, and they needed to charge at that point. So I view this, no matter what the traffic is going to increase as we go, and it's like building a road in future need before you get behind the eight ball. And yes, I'm an advocate for it. No, I don't want to waste money, but at the same token, I don't want to miss opportunities and have somebody nearby put these in and make us useless. So in the economic development standpoint, initially I was thinking that it would draw people to downtown and therefore enhance our business down there, and it could very well still do that, as long as we don't get too far off the beaten path and putting them in a place that's, not usable. Then when it comes to the solar, that's a whole different story.
So solar, if you will, I'll interject again the fact that I had a conversation that included Diane, Brett, and Councilor Fellows, and the fact that, again, anything that we're talking now won't be shovel-ready till next spring. I would use the time through the fall, winter, to make sure that whatever RFP, if we decide to be able to put out there, makes sense for Lisbon. Unfortunately, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of, if you've driven through parts of the state, I forget where it was just outside of Belfast. There's a huge one going in associated with that. They just got the framework, and they'll be setting the panels up. There's a huge one going up on not Uden Road.
Mill Street.
Mill Street, and there's another one on,
Oh, yeah.
help me now, it's going out there,
Babish, you mean, or?
it's in Lisbon. It's massive, too.
In Lisbon?
Yep.
Must be on private property then.
Yeah, it is. And Mill Street, I think it's the one, Mill Street, but it's Ricker. I think that's the one I'm thinking
Yeah, the
of.
one on Mill Street, Ricker, was approved by the planning board, and that's
Point-
one of those
point that I'm
community,
making is that
community solar.
There's a bunch of them. We need to make sure whatever we're doing when we start picking sites that actually make sense for Lisbon, because what our needs and benefits associated with this will be very different than other communities. There's several different ways to be able to approach this. Do we want to own the infrastructure? Do we want to partner with somebody that owns the infrastructure and puts up the investment associated with that? These are all questions that I've got from Diane. Was it no less than 8 different proposals from other communities within the state? What I would actually think that makes sense here is to pick the best of what we like from what we've seen our peers doing and advocate for the one that actually makes the best sense for our situation and flush that out in the coming months is the way that I would approach this.
Mr. Shear, based on our last conversation, I reached out to Shelley Norton. That's how we got the RFPs, and we got a PPA agreement sample. We got an RFQ for other different towns, and all total we got, I think, 8 pieces of paper. That. But what I got from that was those towns seemed to know what they wanted to do. In most cases, they knew parcel A, parcel B, we wanted an RFP for developing this and whatever went with it, and for building A and building B and this kind of thing. We're not that far. We don't know what building A, building B, what parcel, any of that stuff very well. So I guess my point here, and I think Diane's point, was it bears investigation. It needs an RFQ at some point. It might need an RFP. It's an RFQ at some point. It might need just a simple discussion and presentation or workshops or whatever. But it needs a priority, and I think that's Diane's take on it is, where does this fit in the priority list? Because it's a staff job, not a council job. And although I want to support all I can and do help where I can, I don't think I'm really supposed to be doing that. I think it should be at a staff level.
In my opinion, I view it in the form of economic development, but it's one cog in a very busy already wheel in that regard.
What my point was, is to give it a priority. I didn't say priority 1. Does it have a priority somewhere down the road? And if it doesn't, then let's just wipe it off and forget it totally, and we'll come back another day, some year.
No. Right after we hired Brett, we had a peer actually in Topsom that actually wanted to come in and actually market to us what we should actually be doing. Again, I took their pitch the wrong way and really seemed that it was heavy-handed for a self-serving point on their part. And the fact is that was kind of the approach. I think we have a very capable economic development director, and the fact that in all of this that needs to marinate, I would actually like to see where it comes out on that, because what I am hearing, I despise salesmen. And the fact is, they all have a very selfish motive associated with that, and they're going to say it's the next best thing since sliced bread. Well, what was there before sliced bread? Because it's just your approach, and you've got a selfish interest in this. I would ask that same question of Brett. Where, from a priority standpoint, should we place this, Brett, with everything that's actually been dealt to you in the last 6 months, if you will?
I guess I would answer that question this way, and that would be, my instinct would be to go the route of the power purchase agreement and to not look at specific sites that the town would own the array as a first step. And I would look at a power purchase agreement, assuming that that's a lower lift, a lower, from a staff standpoint, a lower investment from a financial standpoint, and it would be a quicker turnaround. I think if we looked for a power purchase agreement or some type of arrangement where we were purchasing power, hopefully accruing some savings in a way that fit with the existing energy contracts, that's probably the first step, is just understanding exactly what the possibilities are there to create some flexibility to even purchase other power. We have to answer that question first, and then would be to look at buying power versus, which I think would be a much deeper dive into analyzing parcels and analyzing solar, the amount of sunlight that it gets in a particular day. And I also think that from an expertise standpoint, let's be honest, none of us in this room are experts about that. But we could look at a number and a guaranteed power price compared to what we're paying and say that makes sense, without the risk of assuming, that this site is going to generate this amount of electricity. So my instinct would be, if there's two paths, one to own the array, take the upfront capital risk, and get a better return over 30 years, versus a quicker turnaround, a shorter term window, recoup some savings, perhaps even set up a dedicated account where the energy savings go into, that then feed further investment in a bigger play, perhaps a town-owned array. That's the way I would do it. So to answer your question, how does this fit? I think that we could, by early in the new year, look at something smaller, something simpler, like a power purchase agreement, RFP, and test the market with that. If we're talking about engineering and really analyzing the sunlight and south-facing slopes and this type of stuff, that's a much bigger ask that I haven't got my head around yet. So I don't know if that shows answers your question, but that's my instinct, is to go a baby step, dip our toe in the water, hopefully get some savings, set that savings aside for a dedicated reinvestment.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Brett and I have talked about that power purchase agreement thing, and I think we're on the same page. Actually, my vision in the beginning was, after listening to the presentation that we got on solar power before, that we could have a solar investment in this town without owning it, at least not initially owning it. And that's similar. That's a PPA of form, but it could include several buildings. It could include a piece of land or whatever, and that could be a purchase agreement type of environment. So yes, that's very much simpler. It's less involvement on our part because we don't have to do all the detail work. Somebody else does that. So maybe that way of looking at it,
People with the skill set is what
go
my
out for a
understanding.
PPA or an RFP for a PPA, but we have to have some general guidelines to go on. What piece of property would we even be thinking about or whatever?
So I'm of the same mindset. I appreciate your candor associated with that. The fact that I am hearing from our economic development director is that the winter time frame to be able to flush out that as a first phase. I might even go so far, if we're successful after that is implemented spring to summer next year, that we actually consider a next step with, is there further that we could do, but you're going to end up having to pay for the consultant for the skill set that we currently do not have. But at that point, we've at least tackled something that is in our wheelhouse as a first step. Does that make sense for where you were seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll make the second because I at least understood what we're actually going after. We're going to empower Brett to actually work for an RFP for purchasing as a first step towards the solar in the winter months, amongst all the other things that he's working towards.
Yeah, it doesn't have a two-week priority.
Yeah, no, but I view it as a tickler file, knowing the fact is, okay, in that time frame, he's going to be looking at other things like the future of Main Street, the Warumbo site, and those kinds of things. The fact that if I were to put a ranking on it, I don't think I would put it anywhere as close to a priority as Warumbo. And the fact is, anything that detracts from that, I look at it as we're actually doing us a disservice. If this property fell in our lap, we need to figure out what its next wave is going to be.
Well, Brett's pretty good at Gantt charts
Yeah.
and things, so I don't get figured out.
No, I very much am Team Brett, and the fact is, I have seen what he can actually do. I don't want to give him another master to actually be able to tackle associated with that. I want him to be able to feel the success of his contribution in this community.
May I? I mean, to me, sitting back, listening to a lot of the discussion we had with the solar people and even on my own behalf, just looking to see what the investment would be, even like on a structure that I have to see payback and stuff. And one of the things that we actually have learned, I think a couple of different things. One is, clean energy does seem to be the buzzword of today. Brett, I mean, it is only going to gain more knowledge by doing more. And when people come into town, as like on Mill Street, and we're going to have between the planning board and economic development, we're going to see more and more of these type of projects. For a couple of different reasons. One is clean energy is something that people are looking forward to right now. Right now, there's I guess one of the big runs right now to try to get solar energy is the idea of some of the credits out there right now. So big corporations can actually get up to a 60 to 80% reimbursement the first year. It's pretty. People that have money can make money by putting solar projects out there. I guess that's easy enough to say, right? But you got to have the money to be able to do it. The other major factor people are pushing for right now is, from what I understand, and I don't know all the details, is the agreement that the state of Maine has right now. They're only going to allow up to 10% of the power produced in Maine on the grid to actually have these type of benefits from solar at this point in time. That's the agreement they have on a state level. So everybody's kind of on that run to try to get that 10% under their belt, So that's where one of the things are right now. People are really pushing for it. So long-term wise, there's no question about it. There's a great savings and a great opportunity. But from what I see, it actually takes time and money initially to make that investment to actually get a return that's actually down the road. Is it a good investment? Absolutely. But I think you'll find a lot of private people and a lot of municipalities have a hard time putting that equity up front, that capital up front, to actually have a long-term gain. Even though it makes a lot of sense, it's just one of those things where, as Norm was saying, that during hard times, you really have a hard time, squeezing your pockets to get a long-term investment when you're just worrying about what's happening tomorrow. So the idea of going out there and actually maybe benefiting from somebody else making an investment, that's good. Who knows? We may even have people coming in and doing projects very much like Mill Street that we may be able to buy into. You know what I mean? So, talk about that private municipal type of.
That's how those work. And the fact is,
exactly,
you come in that they're looking to resell, so just actually getting in on that is actually more than we're currently doing.
Yeah. So, and it comes down to, to me, common sense or, pennies. Diane's actually hooked us into a really good contract right now for power. So that's one of the hard things about selling this is the power. I'm not calling it cheap power right now, but we actually have a really good contract right now that goes out, 3 or 4 years on our power. So we actually know for the next 3 or 4 years what our power cost is, which is very difficult to do in some economies. So I don't think right now we're in a situation where power is going out of sight and we're just trying to find an alternative. I think there's good opportunities out there, so I think a slow roll on this to try to get more information so everybody's informed. And none of this is wasted. I really appreciate what Don has done because the more we get informed, solar's not going away. I mean, we're going to be dealing with solar for a long time. It's only going to be more prevalent. I think Sabattis is actually putting in some big grids too. I believe I was told that Sabattis is putting some even larger than what we're seeing on Mill Street. So this is something our town has to be fully aware of and actually have a good background in. And I was actually watching a show the other night where they were talking about how this benefits municipalities and doesn't. And we definitely have to get more informed on what this stuff does because a lot of municipalities now are actually putting huge initial upfront costs for people to actually put in grids because just to recoup their long term, because there is a difference on taxation of property once they actually get a grid on it. I heard some municipalities, not just hundreds of dollars, but tens of thousands of dollars they collect up front to actually get the permitting and going through the process to actually make it feasible, which I'm not saying that's where we're at, but we have to know the details of this as we start seeing big things come in to make sure that we're not being left behind a little bit by not being knowledgeable on what solar is and what we can do to actually benefit from it.
Mr. Chair, what in relation to what you just said, when I initially heard that presentation, some of us heard different things because we were all kind of talking together. But I did hear that it's possible that we can be on the grid or off the grid, that we can have zero investment dollars. We can buy into a contract that is fully invested by someone else or an energy cost. I've heard that we can include our current energy contracts with it. So all of those things we're not absolutely sure about, but it's all a possibility. We can also, for example, every time I go by this building, I look at the south side of it and I know how big a solar platform it is out there. You can do that as part of an investment with other buildings, like the top of the MTM or something else, or you can do it by itself, either on or off the grid. So all those things we don't know, but when you go out and look for a PPA, you can get those alternatives, and you find somebody that does that, and then they sell it to an investor. So that's how that develops. So,
We have
anyway.
a motion and a second to actually proceed with a PVA, time permitting, with Brett. Any other questions, concerns? All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you, Brett.
And Brett, you set the timeline.
Thank you.
You set the timeline, because the fact is you know what you're competing for priorities associated with that.
Mr. Chair, I just was thinking, I don't know, we always at the LDC are wondering what's the next priority, and that could be a supportive role of the LDC. I don't know, in helping that process.
When we actually have something with an RFP for that, I would say potentially. But right now, it's pretty clear what the goal would be associated with that, so I would just give Brett the flexibility to be able to see where it takes us for right now.
Yeah.
And then he'll bring us back in at that point in time, meaning whether it be LDC or whoever he needs for a resource. Is that the best approach from your perspective?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-176, the Community Development Block Grant Project Development Resolutions.
So these are standard forms, standard of conduct, fair housing resolution, section 504 self-evaluation and transition plan, residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan, and equal employment opportunity statement. These are traditional HUD forms. Prior council in 2012 signed these forms. My contact at the Office of Community Development thought those forms would still be good. He looked at them and said, 2012, it's a little too old. Would you mind updating them? So these are standard forms. I think because obviously they were assigned before and adopted, CDBG, Office of Community Development, they're comfortable that we have the policies in place as a community. So it's really sort of a standard practice here just to put the forms in, pro forma type situation. But I'm happy to answer any questions about those forms if there are any.
Any questions of Brett of the forms?
I'll make a motion for discussion.
I need a second for that.
Second.
You got the second. Go ahead.
I believe these are just protocol as far as for us getting the grant and actually to administer it. It's actually protocol as far as for guidelines that we have to follow and the people that actually participate in also need to follow. So
Yep, it's part of a phase 2 project development phase that we're going to submit, which allows us to get the contract. And I think it's really around, we're going to manage the money, we're going to do it equitably, we're going to take care of the residents of Lisbon generally, and not play favorites or pilfer the money away.
Any other questions? It's part of the process associated with that. We want to be part of the grant associated with it. I completely agree. All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item.
Thanks, everybody.
safe ride.
Drive fast, take chances.
Ordinance 2020-177, amend Chapter 14, General Assistance Maximums and Appendices as presented. This is a second reading, first roll call vote required.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call. And if there's any questions, if not, Twyla, it's all you.
Okay. Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
And Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays, order passed.
I always had a question what we do if we voted that down. They'd just override us anyways, right, and do it. So, I mean,
You can't get more, right?
you know what I mean? It's one of those things where,
Exactly.
yeah.
Next item.
Looks like you're on police cruiser bids, order 2020-179.
Look
Good
at
evening,
that,
gentlemen.
man.
I'm Ryan McGee from the Police Department. I'm the interim chief of police. Here to speak about the cruiser bid process. As you have in front of you, the town manager's office went out to bid for the cruisers. Surprisingly to me, only one actually returned a bid. I had some questions about that. I reached out to some of them. But the situation, I almost feel like Alan had a glass bulb maybe, because the last time we spoke, Alan said, good luck with finding cruisers. And there was some truth behind that. I reached out to one company, and they said it could be upwards of sometime next year where we even saw a cruiser. However, we did get fortunate because the one place that did return a bid was Quirk Ford, and they actually have cruisers that have been ordered from earlier this year. They're due to arrive in November. That being said, because we kept the bids, the cruiser build the same. It's a standard cruiser build that they're pretty much doing across the state. It's actually something they have coming in November. The only difference was it had one feature. That was a $250 feature, which was a police engine idle. And I didn't know what that was and looked it up. And essentially that's, you remove the key from the ignition, press a button, allow the cruiser to still run with its lights on if you're going to be away from the cruiser. It's a safety feature. Issues across the country with windows getting broken and cruisers getting taken. So that's been added. With the cruiser build, just to try to, I went back last year and looked at some of the bids that we had from last year to see how far off it might be, because again, we only received the one bid. The bid this year from Quirk was $33,572, and I found it actually wasn't too far off from some of the bids from last year. Rowe was at $36,885 last year, and Yankee Ford was at $34,271 last year, both obviously more than what they're bidding this 2021 cruiser out. There were no 2020 cruisers available, as Mr. Ward pointed out, he believed would be the case. Casco Bay was a little bit different, less. It was $772 their bid last year. Obviously, I'm just giving you the bids from last year. That way we have a kind of a table to go off of. So the other part of that is the trade-in. I'm not a car salesman, and I can just go off, probably like any other citizen, and log into NADA to look up values. And I did that. And in looking up values for NADA, I found that it was more. I figured about the low end was $6,000, the high end was $7,500. But the quote that they actually gave us was $3,150, and I found that with cruisers, once they get over 100,000 miles, they substantially go down in value. And the other part of that is the engine hours. Pushing 10,000 hours on a vehicle, it's different than your average cruiser. So that was a learning curve for me as well. But I've been looking in other avenues to try to, just to remind you from the last meeting, Mr. Albert wasn't here the last meeting, trying to save as much money as possible. So next year when I do the 2 cruiser year, I have funds already available in the capital plan for the cruisers, so I'm not asking for money. So I have already started pulling all the specs for the cruiser parts to build the new cruiser. I found that I will not have to buy a new light bar. Originally, we believed we had to put new light bars on because of the width. I actually found State Police is using the same light bar that we took off one of the cruisers. It was a newer light bar. So I'll be saving some money there to the tune of over $2,000 actually, which will go towards what I was originally thinking for next year for building the cruisers. I've reached out to several other companies, and as I said, trying to save money where I can. That way I'm not coming to you asking for money, and we'll safely build the cruiser. Just kind of thinking outside of the box. So my recommendation tonight to the council is to go ahead with accepting the bid and going ahead with Quirk Ford. To answer any questions that you have.
I'll make the motion for discussion.
Second that.
Go, Frank.
A couple questions, and supply and demand, right? I mean, that's where we're at right now when it comes to cars.
You're absolutely right.
And that's what you're seeing. But for that same factor, I actually was really kind of that $3,100 really actually stuck out at me also. And for two reasons. One, I mean, it's, they're going to make more money selling that old Cruiser than they did selling you the new one. I mean, I have that feeling. But the, at 8,500, I definitely knew it wasn't worth keeping us in-house to actually meet other needs. I guess my second question would be to Diane, that 3,100, it's a vehicle that I believe you said was actually in fairly decent shape, right? This one here?
I would say that it's burning oil, and I'd have some reserves about keeping it personally.
Okay.
But I'm also going to say that I'm not a mechanic, and it'd be better to have it completely gone through, which, it hasn't been done. It's a simple fact that Cruiser was actually, it's the oldest one. That was purchased in 2013, believe it or not. So it's been around.
Is there any other, on a municipal staff, is there any other vehicles that are older than that or actually higher mileage than that we are using right now that need to be replaced in the near future?
I don't know the answer to that. I think what we do have is working fine. My concern would be it's burning oil, so that's going to cost us money down the road. I really think if it wasn't for that, we might want to look at either trying to sell it outright, but I don't think, if it's burning oil, you got issues, and I think we ought to just trade it in.
So the one that actually is being used right now, and is it solid waste?
Yeah, Steve's using it, wastewater treatment
And that
plant.
is actually an older car, isn't it, or just?
I don't know what year that is off the top of my head. It does have the same similar. It's got to be similar in year to this one, actually. Because
I guess my only point is that I have no problems with the idea of just moving it on and going through, as long as we're not actually going to try to replace something or have something here older that we're actually going to be putting more money into to fix up. I mean, the downfall of some of the vehicles we keep, sometimes they get to be, we go to get rid of them because they're maintenance heavy, but we keep them on staff for other people and we still get the same maintenance.
Yep.
I'm not saying that it's the same level as what a police cruiser would be, but they still need maintenance. So either way, to me, the idea it's the only game in town. So
and no one's come to me. No one's expressed any interest. I can't think off the top of my head anybody that would need a vehicle in town.
I'm not aware that Steve's got any issues with that vehicle that he has.
Oh,
And the last thing I'd want to do is keep one that he's going to have to put money in out of his budget because.
No, I totally agree, and I can't imagine the one that actually has less miles than that. But I mean, it's one of those things where as long as we know that there's not a need coming up,
right.
I'd say to be here a month from now saying we need to replace a vehicle because it's dead on the side of the road. So.
And I agree, and my concern is obviously kind of looking in the future as well, not having to come to you asking for money, and this is a portion of that to be able to help the police department next year as well.
And that kind of leads because next year one of the cruises that we're actually looking for is the K9, right?
Correct.
And that actually will be a special order because that will need to have the rear AC and a few other features that actually typically don't get ordered.
Well, not exactly.
Yeah.
I don't believe we're actually going to have to order the rear AC. The 2021s, the climate control in those are a change, and they actually have all the venting in the back, so to keep the climate.
So you don't think it would be necessary? I knew in the past that was one of the things that was kind of more of a special order, but not as strong as most. So.
And I would agree to that to an extent because the previous ones, it was extra to have the vents in the ceiling, and it was an accessory to turn them on. That's not the case in the new ones, the way they have the venting in the back of it.
Nice.
But I haven't looked into to that extent where there's, I'm going to reach out to canine associations and so on to see what other agencies are doing and the appropriate way to go about it. Obviously, we want to protect the canine, but those are certainly avenues I'll be looking at.
Yeah, and my only thought was is if we're this far out now, if cars ordered now are not coming into the end of next season,
if we ordered this car tomorrow, it'd be in next month.
But if we wanted a 2020, would be out in the next summer by the sounds of things, right? Or at some point, it sounded like it was quite some time away. If we actually wanted to get a 2020 car or next.
No, this is a 2021. There's no 2020s available.
Okay, so it is so it's something that already been previously ordered.
Yeah, he ordered this a while back, and the ones that they originally had in stock, they don't have anymore even since the last meeting. So.
Gotcha. Yep. It's all good. My thought process was thinking about the idea of that trade-in, whether or not it's better suited, if make sure that we didn't have a need within, but I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think they really, killing us on the price as bad as they probably could if we really needed one, so.
Norm?
Thank you. So my thought is, I know that we've gotten into a schedule of, buy one, buy two, buy one, buy two, try to help us out and be smart about our approach. Is there any upside to thinking about holding off? Could we limp along with the one that we have and put in for 3 next year? Is that just a bad idea in the thought process? Will we get a better pricing? I mean, the thought process would be, we're going to be 12 months, outside, 12 months deeper into recovery, and hopefully seeing production ramp up. I don't think the demand will change, but I don't know if the pricing. Pricing's so bad that we shouldn't jump on this.
No.
But I'm just wondering if we, are we okay with a small increase? Doesn't bother me given the circumstances of the situation.
And that's really not an increase compared to
No,
what
it's
we were. It's actually right on
$500.
par. Yeah, so they're staying pretty true, I guess was my
So
point.
then, if that's the case, that's the way we feel. Then it's really just a simple fact that it's all about who can get some here, and it sounds like folks who had the foresight to say, hey, let's pull the trigger on getting some, not knowing what was coming, just playing the odds of, hey, we'll probably find somebody who's going to need someone down the line. And so they got lucky, and it worked out well for them and for us.
Exactly, and I'll just lean back on previously Mark Hagan putting together the capital improvement plan. That's I really like the idea of the capital improvement plans because they're planned, and by doing that, it's not a strain on the budget and the line item. It's planned. The one year, the two the next year. As you can see, it's been working out. We were able to move some cars, but we're getting rid of them at the end of their life expectancy for the police department. So I think from what I've seen, it's working pretty well.
But I would agree with you 100% on that. I don't see any reason why we want to go ahead. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I do want to have the conversation about that just because I think it's important. I don't think we're in a bad spot with making this purchase if we're ready to do that right now. And as far as trade goes, I think it's a roll of the dice. You know what you're going to get because it's not a traditional trade and because it's not traditional use. I think that it's going to take a unique buyer who knows what they're getting, and they'll want what that straight along. So we'll figure out how we want to. If we don't have a way to use it in house here to replace an existing vehicle that maybe somebody has, then I'm sure we can find a way to just wholesale it out and send it on its way.
Don, did you have?
No, I didn't know if you had a second on your motion or not.
No, I made the first to bum rush this for 2 reasons. One is the fact that the point that I would offer is we have 3 players in the city of Lewiston that I actually deal with on a regular basis. I have they're out of Massachusetts, Capital or Central. I have Emerson and I have Park. The fact is, Leo Chacon, and the fact is, I will personally vouch for him associated with that because I think he's a solid player. If we were looking at 14 months, we would be having a discussion of the fact that is his pricing actually legit because he is looking at a car he doesn't own, and the fact is he sure about the pricing, and would be having that conversation with the chief and him. But this car is something that he can have within the month. That's the one piece associated with that. The shelf life or price for a trade on a cruiser is somewhere around the price point that you've actually given in that regard. That doesn't surprise me in the least. What I don't know from Leo's perspective, he has a history of working with municipalities, knowing that it takes considerable uptime from the time he actually bids something before he accepts it. Not knowing that part, typically if we were looking at the 10 months, the fact is he's trying to devalue what that vehicle is going to be in condition down the line. It doesn't really relate to this one that he can have for us for November, but it's still the same price point associated with that. He may know, did he actually look at the vehicle when he put in the bid, or did he make inquiry?
He called me at the police department, and I told him the vehicle's available anytime to look at. It's in the back lot during the day, and I told him I gave him my cell phone. I said, "There's a place you ever want to meet," and he said he may swing by, and I never heard anything else.
Yeah, in that regard, he may have bid it on a safe point knowing that if you had any indication associated with the oil leak, that what it could be associated with that from his perspective too. But point that I'm making for the listening dot above your head is the price is extremely fair for what I've actually seen for cruisers in the last 4 years associated with that. The mileage is what it is. It's the wear and tear on the transmission and the stop and go on the brakes. Those are the two things that actually work against any cruiser in the state at this point.
If anybody has a concern about the price, go online and try to price out a new Explorer and actually see what just over the regular price for a domestic vehicle is. It is quite shocking compared to the discount that the police agencies and municipalities get for what they're buying.
To add to that, the price actually, the total price is 30 without
38 or something, if I remember correctly.
39,930.
Yeah. Yeah, no, then I can't say a negative thing associated with doing anything with Quirk. I have every confidence associated with it. We got the right bid in that regard. If it was any other player that I haven't dealt with or we haven't dealt with on a different basis, you wouldn't see my endorsement. But I think we'll do well with Quirk. Any other questions of Chief? The motion on the table is to sell and accept the trade.
Need a second? I'll second that.
All in favor?
6-0?
Yeah, net of trade. Net of trade. That's absolutely.
That was 6-0.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The only thing that I would say when we actually find ourselves food for thought in the future, if we know we've got a known future expense on a K9 vehicle, maybe if we could actually have that be the year that we do a one vehicle instead of pairing it with another to make it less expensive. So
Yep.
That way you don't have the bumps that we're trying to avoid in the budget cycle. It won't work for this go round, but we'll be doing this 5 years down the line.
Is there any, I thought I heard you discussing, excuse me, I'm going to hijack you.
No, that's fine.
You said there are no real are there any other specialized pieces for a K9 unit that wouldn't be with the components?
The cage, the biggest thing's the cage in the back.
Is that something that's too late to add to this existing?
Excuse me?
Could we make this the K9 unit?
This one coming up, well, the
Oh,
K9 unit only has right now 90 something.
Yeah,
I
so
don't know the
it's,
exact off the
It's
top.
not quite ready. Okay.
Yeah, it's not ready quite yet.
That's fine.
And we can certainly reevaluate things later
no,
on.
I figure food for thought, and the fact is if
I
we could put a
appreciate
K9 on a one unit year, it would be on that year if you ended up with the worst case scenario with a new body style that you had to commit to or costs associated with that, it would not have the additional cost paired with another vehicle to go against that budget. It would help you to, rather than trying to come into this trying to save like we were originally talking about with the $6,000 to be able to put it towards that vehicle next year. You wouldn't have to go that approach. That's all I was offering.
And I agree. I like that idea.
Yeah. No, I think Mark's done us a solid. I have every confidence in you because I know you've been right there from the start to be able to hear it with the fact that taking the pressure off a frontline vehicle and putting it in a backup position and everything that we got going on. Mark and I just talked about this at the county budget and the fact that the sheriff's department goes through the same darn thing. They're in the same process that we were 4 years ago when we started this program. If you can get out from underneath leasing these things on a 3-year lease and not having to pay the interest and just budgeting for it, you're in a much better position.
This is 2013. I mean, look, that's you're moving things around. It was a smart move.
Yeah, no, it's paying off because we're not paying the $6,000 in interest that we're doing each of those vehicles that's out there in that regard but where I'm communicating is we need to make sure that the police department has the resource that's necessary so we don't fall out. You know, nickel-diming it is the situation that we started. This is the success that we fixed this problem. Let's not create another one elsewhere.
I agree.
Make it low-hanging fruit. It's amazing that they pre-ordered the orange cruiser for us and have to
Yeah.
wait for it extra.
I'm sure there's a lot of agencies that are going to be jumping at these. So,
right.
I mean, Alan's got more experience, obviously through Lewiston dealing with this, but
And it's funny too because we don't typically go after the Fords.
think you
but
might
it's
be.
still Quark is one of the heavy players.
Yeah.
Quark's a big one.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too.
Next item, file.
Under other business, council committee reports.
School.
Business as usual.
Planning, sir.
There's no planning board meeting this week. It was canceled.
LDC?
Still moving forward. As our last meeting, we did communicate the idea of trying to focus on the Arumbo and the village. More meetings to come. If you have any interest, please reach out to Brett, and we can make sure that you're on tap for the information coming forward in the next meeting.
Either of you guys want to tackle the Moxie Square discussion as maybe in that?
I think it was I think we both have, different areas probably what we looked at. I think it was actually for the situation we're in. I think it was well attended. We actually had quite a few of the downtown businesses there. A lot of the discussion, pros and cons. I think we heard them all. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had, I guess. And the best thing we can hope for is this whole thing kind of goes away and things get back to normal. But we just had to figure out how we can benefit everybody. And I think the key word's everybody, because I think a lot of people, there's some people there that really didn't think that they were probably being benefited as much as others. So I guess there's a lot of discussion to be made going forward, and it was good dialogue. And I think it's actually healthy to have that type of dialogue, get everybody out there so people don't think they don't have a voice. And I think as time to move forward, a lot of the discussion will move forward, and it's either going to be try to find a result for it all, that's all. And maybe Norm, maybe you can add to a little bit of that, please.
Everything that Fern said, and the thing for me, my takeaways from it, I did have some good discussion with some of the local businesses and local folks with genuine concerns regarding some of the areas that they felt were needed to be talked about. So I felt that there was no bad blood walking away. I felt there were some folks that had some genuine concerns, whether they were business owners or just residents, and I think they were able to have those questions answered, and at least, if nothing else, had a sense that this is an open dialogue, where you turn there, and that's going to continue. I'm excited for the end of this month, because even though we as a council extended the emergency order through the end of November, I think we all realize that the reality is, as long as Mother Nature cooperates, we'll probably put a bow on this thing at the end of this month. And so I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of come back together in November and talk about what went well, what areas are going to be something that we need to talk about handing off the baton, if you will, to our business partners there at Moxie Square if we decide to go with that. So there's a lot of good things to talk about still.
Perfect.
Don, I know you attended too. Anything else that they didn't already cover?
The only thing I noticed is what could affect that throughout the winter is the changes, I believe, that the governor instituted today on the amount of people that can be in a building or in a restaurant. So I don't know, I haven't really read it in depth, but I know there's some increases there. So that could help that situation overall. And maybe it was done because she knew that things were ending for the summer. I don't know. But the other thing that I got from it, or I was, not that I got from it, but I was thinking there, sitting there that night, listening to all this discussion, pro and con, about the lower Main Street, and thinking, I think I even said that 1 year from now, if we're sitting here in this room discussing this stuff, we're going to be worried about parking because of the tearing up of the Main Street. And we need to have some, Main Street needs to have some longer, deeper discussion about this whole matter than just what table we can put where on lower Main Street.
And if I can add to that, it was brought to light that night that a lot of the discussion was about parking, and I know Brett's actually always had my ear when I talked about the idea of the concerns about parking down there, and the idea of how Arumbo can actually relieve some of that. And there's at some point I think we just have to come up as a plan of what we're looking to do. There was a lot of misinformation that night. Is that a good way of putting it, about what level we're at when it comes to parking as far as Union Street? I think a lot of people heard our initial wants, but and how we were moving forward, but those results haven't come to the end yet because of a lot of different reasons, and no fault of anybody on our staff. It's more the idea is a lot of roadblocks been put in our way. But with that being said, I think sometimes communication is, as Noah mentioned earlier, communication is a key factor. So if we're not saying anything, that allows people to actually fill in the blanks. So I think we do need to come up with a parking plan. We have a couple parking areas we are working on. We actually have the Rumble. We have the area down behind the Rusty Lantern. We actually have a couple down off Union Street. I mentioned that night that, one of the things that we learned with the Main Street project is we're going to lose up to 12 spots. Was that number correct? Was it 10 or 12?
There's going to be more than that, but I think in that general area.
In the Main Street area, there's going to be up to 12 parking spots that are going away with the reconstruction of Main Street. And that's not because of the reconstruction. That's just because of the new criteria. It comes from when you have a crosswalk, you're not supposed to have a parking spot on either side of it. So, we did, as Don said, we learned a lot that night that parking is a big issue, and it's a concern for everybody. So I think it's going to be our due diligence, come up with some type of parking plan on how we actually use the space that's available for us, and actually put that out there so people can have an idea of what we're doing. So sometimes if we're not actually, I guess if you're not seeing visual moving parts, people think we're actually just holding still, but that's really not the case. It's even on the Moxie Square, sometimes if we just have a couple weeks or a month with nothing happening, people actually think we're kind of going backwards. But be rest assured there's a lot of work going behind the scenes, and this stuff doesn't happen overnight. And due to the restrictions that the council put on our staff with the idea of with the COVID as far as holding the budget, freezing expenditures, and a lot of the stuff does slow down a little bit for sure. So, but again, coming out of that, I do think we need to come up with some type of parking plan, taking all of the assets we had and come up with a plan on how we're going to facilitate those and the time frame so people can understand where we're at and what we're doing. That's all.
I'm going to take us on a left-hand turn on that one too, if you don't mind, because it was a side discussion that we were having, a couple of us, while I was voting with Twyler and Brett, who was still sitting in the room. Halloween's an opportunity on the Saturday night associated with that. I don't know if there's any traction with rec and police. Diane, if you could reach out to folks tomorrow to see if there's any traction to the idea of doing what we used to do at MTM downtown at Main Street. And I would advocate that we actually close everything from the church at High all the way to 196 and approach it that way for an event that's actually we could do on the Saturday for trick-or-treating with all the concerns and hysteria that's actually coming out of whether it happens and that type of stuff, that if we could build a safe environment for that kind of event, it may have enough time to be able to come to fruition, knowing that, like Moxie, if we're talking a road closure, that would have to be at the 20th meeting from our perspective. And it gives us a couple of weeks to have that dialogue. If it doesn't, then no blood, no foul, but
I'll check with the
at least get the
department heads and see.
powers to be, because I know there was a lot of really good, and I know Positive Change Lisbon was involved associated with some of these things. If we can get key folks associated with something like that to be able to pass the straight face test with the CDC and the governor's guidelines to be able to do something in that large an area, I think we got the perfect opportunity with it being a weekend day. So
I think Mark would actually have to play a big role in that, because I'm just wondering if there's actually more open space at the MTM that's actually usable, out in the grounds versus the idea of downtown as far as for, traffic and stuff. A lot of what makes MTM so great is it's actually linked with the park and linked with all the side streets that people can actually nestle in without bringing a car. I just don't. And again, I think any opportunity would be great. I just think that there has to be some serious planning involved.
Yeah, no, by all means. And that's
and Mark and I discussed that just this week, and we just didn't know how we could make that happen up there this year, not with all the COVID guidelines. We certainly can't do the food and serve that. We just don't know how it could work. It's a big challenge, and I don't know.
So I think the one thing
I'll talk to him about the Main Street, but I just don't know how we're going to be able to pull that off.
I think
But
the
we'll
one
see.
thing that this year we think outside of the box more than we ever have before. So if we take a look at what we know the guidelines are, the recommendations are from the governor, I think we take a look. If we can't do it, we can't do it. Because
Right.
I think if we make an effort and look at what we have and we could come up with something, or come up with a couple ideas. It doesn't have to be grand scale. It's just an opportunity for people to congregate in a safe fashion. Then so be it. If it's not an option, if it can't be done, then at least we looked into it and we know maybe we can give it our best shot.
I know the police do use that night for a lot of community outreach for the kids, and they're actually a huge part in what happens down at the Positive Change and the rec center. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what their thoughts are for the evening hour, but I'm sure they're still going to be out doing their thing, and I'm not sure,
Right.
you know, what contact or what level they'll have with, you know, the community type policing that I've had in the past. But I'm sure, you know, I know I can't speak for Positive Change, but I know, you know, for the rest of this year, most of our events were actually kind of trying to look at alternative measures versus the idea of what we've traditionally done, only just to try to not create any concerns that may and may not arise. That's all.
No, by all means. So, like I said, if nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it. And the fact is that trying to actually get ahead of it while we still have time to be able to make it a reality if there's something that's an option there.
You know, some stuff's still going to happen. It's just a matter how it's.
Who takes the catalyst to be able to make it happen? Right.
Yep.
Right. All right. Conservation, I got nothing since the last meeting. I'm confident Richard will actually set out as I know more. Recreation.
So I talked about the tent that went down on Main Street earlier before the meeting today, and the recreation crew, fantastic group, did a good job of rising to the occasion. Unfortunately, that tent was not being able to one of the poles broke, and they wouldn't be able to get the part ordered in time before our closure at the end of the month. So, command decision to take the tent down for now and use umbrellas with the picnic tables that are down there to kind of muscle through these last 3 weeks. And I was there over the weekend, and it worked out fabulously. So, hats off to the rec department crew for getting down there and getting that taken care of quickly and getting suitable alternatives in place.
County, Mark and I finished up the heavy lifting associated with that last week. We've gone through all of the expenses, revenues, including jail. Net increase after adjustments, we're down to 0.23% is the net impact associated with that. Their intent was to actually come in as flat as they could, and I think that we've achieved that goal. There is potential that when the commissioners finally act upon this in the time frame that they do, which will be the first week in November, they may still come in at zero because we've gave them enough opportunity with delaying interest and insurance decisions to the very last moment to be able to get the maximum impact. That said, we delivered hard. Mr. Crowell, who's city manager for Auburn, actually spoke very specifically associated with one of our common tasks with the pricing for dispatch services from the sheriff's department and actually getting a true cost. I made it a single point to bring it up every time he didn't associated with that whether it be facilities and or the IT budget, they clearly are not factored into the increase associated with that. More so as the communications budget actually is supposed to have all costs that actually are increased passed on to those communities, and Mr. Crowell clearly pointed out that that is lagging. That is not the case. So bluntly put it to them that it's the same discussion that we put in a more delicate term last year that fell on deaf ears this year. If you're not listening, then clearly you and I are not on the same page. That said, there were other discussions that actually went positive and some not so much. On the positive side, We had a county budget person that actually highlighted the death in the jail last year. What could we do to actually avoid similar circumstance this year? Mr. Sheriff Sampson actually came up with a body scanner. The fact is that wasn't in the budget, but the jail actually has had a surplus of $500,000. We took $100,000 of that reserves to actually earmark it specifically for that purchase to be able to address that issue without increasing the burden upon the taxes. And on the topic of some that didn't go quite so well, the discussion associated with Lewiston and Auburn actually not paying for dispatch services by getting the lion's share of the bill. It's hard to sympathize when Sheriff Sampson actually rated Lisbon to actually take all our dance partners associated with that. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic to see what the bigger fish are actually advocating for, that the same issue that we have here. Be curious to see in my last year associated with that next year where they go, because I will be highlighting that to see that 2 years delivering the same message, that they address the revenue side of the dispatch services for the communities that are taking it. Anything I missed on that, Mark?
I think that pretty much covers the major highlights there.
Thank you, sir. Library.
Nothing new to report.
Water?
They haven't had a meeting this month yet.
Okay. Town manager.
So you saw my report in the budget, the agenda packet for projected projects that we're going to be doing in this upcoming month. But I want to highlight some things that I did in the month of September, or just give you some updates on some of the items. The Davis Street Force main break, remember that happened? So we had to turn in our reports to DEP, and then that had to go in front of the NCR, which is the Non-Compliance Review Committee. They reviewed it, and I'm pleased to say that we got some really great feedback from them, and it's all kudos to the way that Steve runs his treatment plant. They really like everything that he's been doing for the plant, and it's probably, they feel that we are investing a lot into our collection system, and we really made a reasonable effort to clean up that spill when it happened. But just the way that he runs the plant and he keeps everything up to date, they don't usually see that. So I think that's kudos to him, and we didn't get fined in any way. So they did make some recommendations on what they thought we might want to look into. And he's going to be looking into that with Mandy to see if there's any of those that are feasible. But there aren't any mandates that we have to do. But I just want you to say that he runs a top-notch facility over there, and he keeps us out of trouble, which is good.
Thank you very much, Steve and staff.
Absolutely.
For doing a great job.
The other thing is the Trio sequel. It's a new, it's not a new platform. They've had that out for a few years now, and we're probably one of the last municipalities to move towards it. And we had a training session today on it. And it's a customer type base where you have, the platform is you have all of your data for your residents in one spot. So like if you make an address change on the utility billing side, it's going to affect the assessing side. So it's all integrated. And they would like to move us to that by the end of the year. We had some concerns after we met today, and we'll see how we go moving forward. They're going to have to clean up some of our concerns that we have, especially on that scenario that I just gave you. And when it comes time to do the liens, we have to really rely on the property side of it. So if the changes are being made on the sewer side that's going to affect the property side, is addresses and so forth, we need to be cautious of that. So there's going to be some more training coming up in a few weeks, and I'll keep you updated on where we are on that.
Like you're using the lessons learned from previous moment.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't as bad. I mean, it's the same for everyone, but it's just
Set expectations out of the gate.
It is. There's some things that we're just a little bit concerned about that we're not used to, and they're gonna work with us, and if they can try to fix them, they will, but.
That's great for you.
The other thing, at the next meeting, we're gonna be bringing a Casella contract back to you. It'll be a multi-year contract. It's gonna be a little different than what we've had in the past, and I'll get you some more information on that.
And I'm assuming when you actually comes through, we'll see is it going to be a completely different format, or are we going to see the strikeouts and the changes to be able to have you speak to those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry.
It's a different type of, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, take your time.
She has a term for it, and she's gonna give me the summary on it. The type of contract, but I think we're gonna end up spending less in the long run. And we didn't even know this was available. It's been out for a couple of years. Sorry, it's my sinuses.
No, it's fine.
I get emotional when I think about how good I
I know.
So is she a representative from
Yeah, it's
Casella?
from Casella, yeah, and she and another lady came out, so it's gonna be there's two different divisions, and they're gonna work together with one contract for us.
Okay.
And they're going to give us some good rates. You know, like I mentioned earlier, the hauling's going to go up from $130 per haul to $245. But as far as on the recycling side, I think we're going to get some more revenue back that we hadn't seen in the past.
Okay.
So it's going to kind of offset some of that. But it's going to be a better type of contract for us. We did a lot of research on other contracts and other vendors, but Casella is the way to go.
Okay.
We're going to have a whole outline for you on that, a summary on what we've looked at.
And the contract will kick in for the next
Where
budget?
it'll be November 1st. It'll go for 3 years.
Okay, so we'll be coming back in October because it's got to come into play sooner.
Yep. The other thing I'm working on is the annual Thanksgiving. This year we're going to be doing a Thanksgiving basket instead of having the meal because of COVID-19. So I'm working with Pastor Jonathan Jones and with Mark as well to get that program going. And I'm getting ready to send out letters to the businesses to get donations for that. And also for the Christmas giving tree as well. It's all in one letter, so we're trying to we just don't want to see those two programs go by the wayside because of COVID-19, because there's really a need out there for those people. So I can't talk anymore, so that's all I'm going to say.
Is this something you've taken an active role in the past, or use this actually?
I have not, no,
augment?
because our general assistance caseworker, we don't have her anymore, so I'm stepping up
say.
to take care of it,
Okay.
with some help.
And who is the help associated with that? Is that a recreation kind of thing, or that's where I was
Yeah,
knowing that
it's
the
really because of the,
community side of it. The fact is, yeah, that would be a good resource.
yeah, I think so too, right now with everything that's going on, he's, and I talked to him about it, and they're all on board to help with that, and I haven't talked to him about the Christmas giving tree yet, so I think I'm gonna need their help on that
But
as
it's a time
well.
on both. Okay.
There's gonna be some time, yeah.
No, meaning it's a time to be able to be considering both.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
The need is there. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, the
No,
need is
I
there.
don't disagree, and I wasn't sure if it was associated with Judy's ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to send out letters asking for donations during COVID-19, but because of the recipients of the donations, I think we really need to, because I would not want to see both of these programs
You got
fail
the right
because we don't
person,
have the
'cause
funds.
Jonathan's got a lot of positive energy himself.
Yes,
The fact
yeah,
is, if
he
he
and
can
I
actually
met.
mobilize
Yep.
the church members,
Yep.
the key people associated with that
Yep.
I very much, just from my interaction with him at the Moxie, is the fact is you got the right person to
Go
be
get
able
her.
to fill that.
Gets it done.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll get it done. So anyway, back to the other report. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question as well, too. Is that you guys saw Diane's first attempt at actually putting in here a monthly report of what the priorities for the individual departments. It totally meets what I was envisioning. It's probably more detailed than I but what I don't want is I don't want to slow anybody's roll, because the point that,
No.
one of the things that we've been talking about goals for 3 years now,
Yep.
is the fact that it has to be coming from the departments to help us help them. We need to know what they're doing associated with that, so I think it
Important
works
stuff, yeah.
towards that.
Just so you know, it doesn't represent the whole list of things that we do, and there's no guarantee that we're gonna get all of this stuff done. That's what we wanna do, but as you know, Alan,
No,
Things change on a day-to-day
that's what I
basis.
said, it's probably more than I anticipated, because I would just hit the highlights.
yeah,
But what I would say, okay, 6 months down the line, how much of what you were looking for you got accomplished? I think that allow the department heads to be able to say the same thing. Give us an update, where you
I
stood on
actually
it.
like this report because I can always look back and refer to it, because
Where do we
I
stand
can't
on this
remember what
topic?
I did yesterday anymore.
Yes.
You know, and so you can just call me an overachiever.
Perfect, perfect.
Only if you get all of everything done, that's all, right?
Yeah, exactly. If we've identified the goal, that's an
There you go,
achievement,
yeah.
right,
It's
right.
all
Well, I have
No,
both
feel that.
reports up on my computer daily now, and I plug things in daily as they happen, because
Yeah, it's hard
that's the
to
only
do
way I
that.
can get through it.
It sucks being a proactive person in a reactive world. But damn it, that's me.
You try, right?
Exactly.
Oh, one more thing.
See, she's
This is good news.
gonna cough again.
I know, good news. I don't know how many of you are going to remember this, but this has happened when I first came to work here, a little over 6 years ago. The
Friends
town went to court over the Kurt Kimball issue. And Dan Feeney, does that all ring a bell to you?
Dan, we remember.
All right, so anyway, we got judgment against Kurt Kimball to, I think it was like $35,000. It had to do with that economic development check that was cut to him. So anyway, we got the judgment, went through the courts, got the judgment, and executed a writ of execution. And I got a call from our attorney a couple of weeks ago stating that they were notified that the Kimball house is going to be sold, and we're most likely going to get our money plus interest, and that's probably up around $50,000 now.
Hey,
So and I didn't think we'd ever see that, but when the house sells, we'll get our money.
and where would
It's a
the
good end
proceeds
to that
be?
story.
Where would the proceeds be slotted? Can we put it in the sale of properties account? Please? Just like anything else, anything there, I would just dump it there, because I know we're not supposed to be in the business of real estate, but when the opportunities come, if we can actually make some key changes without having to raise money to do it, I think
No,
it
and
makes
when
sense.
we set that account up, we made it very broad on how we could use it. We can even use it for capital improvements, not
Right.
just the purchase of property. So it's very broad on
Yep.
the use of that account.
No, that's another perfect windfall for dumping that there. The same thing with the other one when that comes to fruition as well.
Exactly, that'll go in the same one, yep.
So you're saying no street Nazi golf cart, no cats, Nazi playing?
I'll get the Rust-Oleum, we'll do Randy's.
And then Pine Woods Road should wrap up by the end of the month, hopefully, as long as the weather permits. They're working on the driveway entrances.
What's the feedback we've heard? Quite specifically, I haven't had Ken actually corner me of when the hell is that damn road going to be tarred again. So the fact is, I look at that as a positive. But I
I've
want to
had a couple of people call me and thank the town for doing it and doing it the right way, and not just a patch and not just an overlay. They actually did it right for a change and did the total reconstruction and did a really good job.
Right. Tracy's father is pretty tenacious. If you've ever had it.
There's a couple people on that road that have some input.
Next item, Twyla.
Under appointments, order 2020-179 to appoint the warden for the November 3rd election.
Oh damn!
That guy.
Ricky Roberts again.
That guy again.
That must
Make
be
a motion?
It's your turn.
Make a motion.
A second.
All in favor, Ricky.
6-0, order passed. Order 2020-180 to accept the resignation from Appeals Board member Bruce Marshall.
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
I'm going to vote
Actually moved
no.
out of town, I think.
No, I'm not accepting his resignation. Thank you.
Oh.
Even though he doesn't live here.
All right,
So it's
next
5-0-1.
item.
5-1.
No, I was kidding.
You weren't kidding?
That's just not good
All right, I
government at
was-
all.
Next thing is Order 2020-181 to appoint your Finance Committee members. You need to appoint 5.
Dan, you want to come in?
He wants to sit up there.
You mean you didn't go
No,
over?
come on in. Come on in. This
One of our
directly
few-
impacts you, sir. Come on in. You can at least hear the discussion. All right, we need to appoint 5 people. We've held 6 people that actually have stated their intention all through the COVID shutdowns and everything, and Dan is actually the face of one of those 6 people that we've actually recruited. I think we've got some really good interest with a task that we had put off to this time frame, hoping to let some of the discussions with COVID actually settle down. That plan hasn't really come to its fruition, just like everything else, but the need is still there. And our intent from day one is to reintroduce the Finance Committee with the task that's there outside of the budget constraints to be able to afford them the time to be able to get into some good work. That said, the list of candidates here, do I have a motion for the 5 panel that we would actually appoint?
I make the motion that we accept the 5 that was predetermined or picked.
The 5 that actually we would accept would be Daniel Lehman, Noli Lopez, Curtis Lunt, Heather Ward, and Jesse Zach
I'll
to the
second
Finance
that.
Committee.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion on the topic? All in favor? Diane, is the liaison, remind me again, is that you or is that Kayla? I am assuming
It
Kayla
would be both,
would be.
Kayla, both of us actually.
So
would
that
be.
first meeting to be able to set them up, find out the time frame that works for everybody's schedule to be able to get them together, elect a chair, and let them hit the ground running with that first set of tasks.
Yep.
You mentioned you had a task for them, for the general consumption, with one of the members sitting here. Can you maybe share that with the group?
Well, we've got one is the transfer station, and then another one may be a TIF application, a TIF, another TIF. I can't get into any more detail.
No, I'm not asking for any of the specifics associated with that, but
But that would be a good one for them as well.
Dan, for your benefit associated with that, anything with the transfer station, you've probably heard some of the dialogue for the paper bags discussion and the increase in fees that we actually did for the tipping fee, going to the $25. What we're trying to actually get from you guys is smaller sound bites to be able to look at the full discussion, to be able to not pigeonhole us in one direction, but making sense that when we come out the other side, we've got something that makes sense from somebody that can spend a little more time on it than just us accepting it. So we kind of view it as some of the goals of the LDC or the planning board. They have specific tasks that putting a group of people with a skill set with finance to be able to look at something that has been the great equalizer in this town is the transfer station. That seems to be a logical one at this point.
Definitely, if I may, it'd be good to actually have the list of complaints and concerns and just to know what to deal with, because it is a pretty vast discussion. But definitely and I was going to bring it up earlier, but I knew this was coming up. It's probably one of the biggest phone call issues and stop-in issues I've had this year was the idea of dump permits and the transfer station as a whole. So I think that the idea of putting some resources into it, even though nothing changes, the idea that we actually looked into it to even determine that we're doing the best we could would be one thing. The idea of just coming up with an easy solution on how we actually do permits. I mean, it seems so our process we have is doesn't suit everybody's needs, I guess, and how we actually take care of that. I don't know. Maybe we are doing the best we can on it, but I think there's some interesting discussion on how that can be done. So,
My thoughts here, when we talked about bringing the finance committee back, the thing that's the most important is that every budget cycle we come through, and we have stacks of different department information that we have to fly through. And I want to leverage your expertise and all the other folks that were chosen tonight. You have a keen ability, because of the professions that you're in, to be able to absorb this information in a manner and digest it, and then be able to look at it, come back with maybe some perspective that we will not have, and will definitely benefit from when it comes time to fact finding and then making decisions based off the best information at hand. That's really where I see the finance committee being an asset, and a strong one, because not only will you take what we have for problems, using the transfer station as one of them right now, but you might be able to come at it from perspectives that we're not going to see, cost savings. And if we try things this way after we look at everything together. So these are the kinds of things that I know that I'm excited about, and can't wait to see you guys get to work at some of these tasks and problems. Because I know from those sorts of discussions, good information is going to come our way. It's only going to help improve efficiencies here. So thank you very much.
And I would say, I don't know if you're sitting here, Dan, sitting here like a deer in the headlights look, I don't know. Whether if you don't know where to start or whatever. I know that Public Works made some proposals last year that were food for thought, and actually made a proposal. We made a change that didn't really happen that way. But since then, there's been a lot of discussion about, like Alan said, paper throw, or even trash pickup, or dumpsters, or no commercial loaders, or scales. All those things have been in the mix, and those are, I think, what we're looking for direction on, and what's possibly the best.
The first
solution.
couple of meetings I envision would be getting them the information from the charter and the ordinance that we put together for what their tasks are, and listen to what they have for feedback, for information, and see where it takes them. You can give them the task, but make sure they get the resource, so we're not actually having that overwhelmed. Let's give them the resource to be able to succeed up front, because that has been our goal. It's been several years we've been talking about the finance committee, to be able to make sure that we worked it to be able to be in that time frame outside of a budget constraint. To your point, Don, is the fact is let's leverage it for its full ability. So that said, I thank you personally, because I know you and I have had a couple of dialogues. Where do I fit in associated with this, between that, the planning board, and the fact is, and I told you quite specifically, both. The fact is, I'm not going to slow somebody's roll that wants to get invested in this community. So thank you, sir.
And
Thanks for hanging around
congratulations.
tonight. We were long-winded tonight, so thanks for sticking it out. We appreciate it. I also wanted to thank everyone who put in on this, those who are part of the committee and those who are not. We appreciate you throwing your hat in the ring.
Absolutely. All in favor of motion?
Order passed, 6-0.
Any questions, Dan? No, I thank you. The fact is, what I would say, when you find yourself getting up to speed with Diane and Kayla, ask the questions, make sure you guys get the information up front, because I would have a much slower roll out to make sure you guys understand what the tasks are going to be able to make an informed decision, to be able to bring it back to us. So, thank you guys. Next item, Twyla.
Councilor Communications.
Anybody? Please.
So on Saturday, cool thing about Moxie Plaza, I just wanted to point out, about a month ago, a group up in Auburn reached out to me. It was just one of the guys that was dining at one of the restaurants downtown, and as he was coming out from eating, he said, "I understand that the music that's going on here is something anybody can get in on possibly." And I said, "Yeah." Talking with it was the band Camp of Rock, is what it was. Camp of Rock out of Auburn. And these these are all students, aged from, I believe, as young as 11 or 12 to all the way up to right before they were senior in high school, or 17 or quite. Long story short, he said, can I get my kids down here? They haven't played because of COVID since August 14th or whatever it was, and we really like this opportunity. We didn't get as many. Normally we play all kinds of fairs and Liberty Fest, and we didn't get that. And I said, absolutely, we can find that spot for you. They played this weekend, and those kids absolutely killed it. It was fantastic to see. It made me wish that, I was like, we have to be thinking about this. I know our own recreation department does a talent show at their summer camp. So I got my gears spinning. I was like, we got to find a way to kind of get these things together and do this when we're outside of the COVID piece. So I just wanted to point that out, that this on-the-fly Moxie Plaza thing keeps, out and giving us great new ideas and new business partners. Because in speaking with them, they were more than happy to share their information and time with us to try to get something launched, which is awesome. Cool.
Anybody else? I would like to highlight the article that was in the Sun Journal today on the town bonding for the $140,000. I know it's usually this time of year where you hear something from us, and in that regard, this is an item that's actually necessary for the increased cost for that project. It's funding that we actually already have, so this is not an unfunded mandate that actually will be coming from taxation. The funds will be already set aside, so I would like to see the town's support to be able to pass that, to be able to make that project come to fruition now that we actually have a time frame that's a little more solid from MDOT.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't know if you know it, but the Times record, it was above the line, above the fold, splashed all over it tonight. So
Perfect.
it was a perfect headline.
Perfect.
And right in there is all about parking too. So
Yeah, there's through that transition, it's by no means going to be an easy task, but we need all the dialogue that we're currently pursuing on parking to be part of this process as we move forward, for sure.
We did send out flyers. Did you get
Yes.
yours?
Yes.
That sparked that. So I'm assuming that was probably part of the article too, or looking at the local initiatives. I appreciated that actually there, because I'm hopeful that the average person sees it for what it was, not asking for another ask. It's for something that we already have funding for something that's been in process for several years to get to this point. Anybody else? Next item, 12.
Audience participation for new items. So at this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Seeing none, those listening from Town Hall Live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lasbonme.org. Councilor Ward will review his emails at this time.
Dan, you got a list of demands? You're too agreeable. How about something from Michelle? We don't have time for that? Okay, we'll move on.
I have one item that's not on your agenda. I just want to bring to your attention. I received an email today notifying us that the Center for Tech and Civic Life has offered a second round of grants, and they provide reimbursement for purchases and supplies due to the COVID-19 for just elections only. And so we would like you to authorize the town manager and the town clerk to apply for the election purchases and supplies due to COVID-19 that qualify for that reimbursement or purchase. It might be things like hand sanitizers and...
I have a first. Any second?
Second.
I got it.
Okay.
Perfect,
And
absolutely. Thank you, because I just heard about that through Kathy this week, so that was on my radar, but thank
the
you for
deadline
bringing it.
is October the 15th, so it's before your next meeting, so we need to move quickly.
Thank you for getting it on our radar, and thank you for pursuing it. Much
Okay.
appreciated.
We'll do that then.
The vote on that one?
All in
Yes,
favor?
all in favor?
Okay.
6-0. Order passed.
I had something and it's already gone.
To go that what you think?
No, I wasn't there, unfortunately. But it wasn't important either, too, because it was a flash and gone, so forget it. Next item, Twyla.
Okay, executive session none, so the next item is Order 2020-182 to adjourn.
Make a motion.
A second?
All in favor? We out?
Here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a lot of things over here to be signed before you leave.
There is.
There's a lot,
made it.
yep.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Now you just sitting down that long.
I'm not, I tell you. It's hard to get up, isn't it?
All right, speed.
It's called old age.
Don't slow us down, don't speed round.
I still know what you want. You want names or signatures?
Signatures. Yep, signatures on everything.
Can I stop on the other
This
side of
is
the
your
table?
poll permit, that's your liquor
All right, here we go.
license,
Here's
GA
behind the one.
ordinance.
Speed round. Sign my name,
Just
Jeff
put everything you need to sign in
We
one
don't have to take
meeting.
it, do we?
What?
He wants to put everything that you need to sign in one meeting this year.
Got my side. That's a big full table. So I think you did well.
Yeah.